This is Introduction to Counseling. I am Bruce Bradway. You may have seen my video. I look old in that, that video. Anyway, this is where I live, Lost Nation, Iowa. This is my telephone number. We will have office hours if you have any questions about anything. You can Zoom with me. Monday through Thursday, Monday and Tuesday are at 3 to 5 in Mountain Time, and Wednesday and Thursday is 8 to 10 Mountain Time. So if you need to see me and talk to me about anything, there you go. Or you can email me, and this is my email address. So this class is Introduction to Counseling. We're going to cover counseling as best we can. This is a pretty good textbook. This is actually a textbook that came out dealing with the techniques used in social work, and it was adopted by my predecessor at Diné College, and I found it such a good text that that I'm continuing using it. I taught human services when I was teaching at Fort Belknap College up in Montana. It's not Fort Belknap anymore. Now it is Ani Nakota College. It is in Harlem, Montana. Not that that's important. Anyway, it's a good text. So how in the world do we pass this class? There's going to be a quiz with each chapter. There are 15 chapters. They're relatively short. They tend to be relatively short. Um, there will be a 5-page paper that deals with. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. One of the things that you need to do is create a character for yourself that has a mental problem of one kind or another, or is having some kind of trouble, and you will create a fictional biography. Now, the thing about this person that has this problem, they can't have a problem that you have ever had or have a problem that anybody close to you has ever had. Potentially, if you start acting like someone or like your a character that has a problem that you have had in the past, you may relapse. That's that's a possibility. The other problem would be that if you are acting like somebody that you're close to who has a problem, that can cause a relapse as well. So the person has to have a problem that you don't have and that you are not close to. How about that? There's, you got the whole DSM-5 to look at if you want to find something. Um, so you will create this fictional biography, and there are copies of the fictional biography form or the history form that you will use. I will post these, and when you start doing your mock counseling with other students, then you will act as your character, and they will counsel you, and then you will act, or they will act as their character, and you will counsel them, and that's what you'll do. You'll be trading counseling sessions back and forth. Okay, so one of the things that you need to do is write a 5-page paper about the problem that your individual has. That's to teach you what it's like, or what this person should act like. And a 5-page paper in this case, a 5-page paper is 5 pages of text. That's not the introductory page. That's not the reference page. That's 5 pages of text. And one of the things that I will do is count lines, and that's I want 115 lines because if you multiply 5 times 23, there's 23 lines on a sheet of paper. Usually there is. Sometimes it's 22, sometimes it's 21. But there should be 23 lines, and there's 5 pages, and that's 115 lines. Okay, so that's worth 100 points. The quizzes are worth 150 points. Um, There will be a discussion worth 10 points for the first 10 weeks, and that will encompass that'll encompass 10 points. Um, After 10 weeks, we're going to start counseling, so we need to be done with all of the textbook at that point. Fictional biography. The counseling sessions, you need to do 10 of them, and each will be worth 10 points, and that'll be worth 100 points. So a lot of work and a lot of grading on my part. So, and I don't know, how many of you are there? 21 people as of the last time I checked. I guess people can sign up today if they want to. Anyway, okay, so there you go. That's how you pass the class. You do all of those things. My goodness, that's a lot. Okay, and that says that I do count lines. I don't count words. I count lines. I know some of your instructors count words and require a certain amount of words. And there's your due dates. Okay, something I'll tell you, but I can't put in my syllabus is that I don't count off for late work. Most instructors have due dates and they're fairly strict about it. I do not. So if you are late with something, you fall behind, your child gets sick, don't worry about it. Just catch up later. And don't worry about, you don't have to tell me that this is a problem. I will assume that you're going to catch up. And I always think positively about my students, and you are my students now. So I will assume that everything is okay. If you need to tell me something, you can email me, or you can Zoom in on during office hours. If office hours don't work for you, you've got something else that you're always doing at that time. You can make an appointment, a Zoom appointment with me, and I will be glad to Zoom with you whenever you're available. I'm at your disposal. Okay, the other thing is AI. If you think you're going to write a paper using AI, probably not a really good idea. Normally, you can tell if someone has used AI. For one thing, there aren't any grammatical errors. And for another thing, a lot of the references are made up. Now, the problem with AI, of course, is that AI doesn't only give you right answers. AI can give you a compendium of answers. So if you're asking AI a philosophical question, what it's going to do, it's going to look at all the answers, all those answers, it's going to put them all together and come up with a compendium. So it may be wrong. That's the problem. So if I ask you questions about the Navajo Nation, AI is not going to know very much about the Navajo Nation, only what it reads on the internet, and it will take all that information. And if somebody said something really ugly about the Navajo Nation, that's going to become part of your answer as well, and that's something you really don't want to do anyway. And it's cheating. I consider it cheating. So don't sell yourself short. I'm an English teacher. I will correct your grammar. Um, my first degree was in English, so I can do that. A lot of people who aren't English teachers can't do that, but of course that was over 50 years ago. I graduated from college. What did I graduate from college? 1971, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in English. So, yeah, that was a long time ago. Has English changed since then? Yeah, it has changed a little bit, but that's okay. I can still do that. Okay. Yes, I changed something. So let's go ahead and get started on chapter 1. I apologize that this is a little bit late. I'm teaching 6 classes and I'm creating one, so it's the week was kind of long. Not only that, but we're trying to integrate this new Canvas LMS learning management system, and it's not going as well as we had anticipated. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started on the lecture. Interesting picture of a man creating himself out of solid granite. That's the idea anyway. Okay. Understand the client's personal beliefs, influences on personal development. What we need to do is understand the client's personal beliefs. This is probably the hardest thing to do if you're going to become a counselor, is understanding your client's personal beliefs. You have to accept them as they are. We have spent most of our life focusing on our own selves, and so now all of a sudden you have to focus on somebody else's thoughts and beliefs that don't have anything at all to do with you, and you can't change them. All you can do is interpret them. This will be influenced by different aspects of the client's culture, of course. How closely do they adhere to the culture in which they grew up? And this is huge on the not just on the Navajo Nation, but in Indian country. So how traditional are the individuals that you're dealing with, if they are native individuals? How strongly do they adhere to their culture? The client's race is important. How strongly do they identify with their racial structure? There are people complain, well, they don't act black enough, or they don't act Hispanic enough. You know, and people have different ideas about how people are supposed to act. Well, some people really don't identify with their race. You see this on television from time to time. You'll have an African American who's going to high school in a white neighborhood, and he acts white. He acts more white than he does black, or he seems to anyway. And you see this on television all the time. Or what was I? What is that movie? Zebrahead. Zebrahead is a movie about a white guy living in Detroit who falls in love with an African American lady, and it's, of course, Zebrahead is kind of like Romeo and Juliet. Anyway, uh, and the and he seems to act and talk as if he were black. Okay, so how strongly do they identify with their racial structure? If there is more than one race represented, which is the most important, and of course, if they are of mixed race, and of course, this is coming out about Vice President Harris. She has both Asian Indian and Jamaican ancestry. Her father was Jamaican, and her mother I think her father's has passed away, but her mother has passed away. So her mother was from India, and her father was from Jamaica. And the question is that people want her to either act black or Asian Indian, and of course, you know, that's up to her. If there is more than one, is the multiracial aspect a factor? And of course, that can be a factor with one foot in one culture and one foot in another culture. A counselor needs to recognize that our own culture might influence the way that we see and interpret their clients. A counselor needs to recognize that their racial background might influence the way that they see others, especially if those others are from another race. And of course, that gets very difficult. This is one of the problems they had in the South, especially. The South has a large population of African Americans. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee had large populations of African Americans, and about 50 years ago, all social workers were white because black people had not been allowed to go to colleges. There weren't any colleges for them. Social work was a new field, And so all of the counselors were white, and a lot of their clients were black. So it got really strange because the white people just kept telling the black people to, well, why do you act like this? Why don't you act white? And that was, of course, a problem. And that has changed. Of course, it's changed. Social work has changed, and people. And now we are training people to identify people by who they are and where they come from and their mindset. We do not. It's not our job to change the way people think. A counselor needs to come to grips with their own ethnicity and how that influences who they are and how they see others. So if you're one of an individual that's still really mad about the long walk and you think all white people are evil, then probably this isn't the job that you should be looking into, because potentially you're going to not only counsel people who are white, but you're also going to be counseling people who identify more as white than whatever Native or African American or whatever, and you have to accept that. You you have to accept the client from their perspective, not from the one that you want them to adhere to. Self-understanding is an essential step in understanding your clients. There are multiple influences on how you see yourself and interpret the world around you. Your culture, your race, and ethnicity are important. Your gender and sexual orientation are influential. Your socioeconomic status, spirituality and religion, life stage, family of origin, and disability or ability are influential. The level of stress demands in your life is important as well. Uh, my wife is a hospital administrator, and she was running a clinic up in Montana, and she had a doctor who was very, very religious, and he would preach to his client, his patients when they came in, and it got to the point that people didn't want to come in anymore because he was just such an irritant that they didn't. He was a good doctor. That wasn't his problem. His problem was he wanted to preach more than he wanted to practice medicine, and so my wife had to fire him. And the reason she fired him is because he was such a pain in the butt. And he, if he detected that you were not a religious person, then he treated you differently. He treated you worse. I had a skin cancer on my cheek, and he said, "Looks like a rat bite to me." And why in the world would you say that to somebody? You're a doctor. Why are you talking about rat bites? It's cancer, dude. That kind of thing. Anyway, she fired him. Didn't have anything to do with what he said to me. It had to do with what he said to everybody else, especially people who were of different religion than him. And that got kind of strange. I'm not sure whatever happened to him, but I'm sure he's preaching somewhere, wherever he is. Multicultural competence is a significant predictor of satisfaction in counseling. Difficulties may arise from unacknowledged differences in perception. It is critical to examine beliefs, assumptions, and biases. It is equally important to understand a culture's influence on clients. We read about, so how do we learn about other cultures? We read about other races, cultures, and ethnicities. This is a good way to keep current, is to see what people are saying about differences. Okay, we're also going to watch movies. We recognize the strengths and weaknesses of dominant and minority racial groups. We develop meaningful relationships with people from various racial and cultural groups, that we can gain a different perspective on all people just by talking to people. And this is actually the best way to do it. I have friends who are Dene. I also have lots of friends who are from the Fort Belknap Reservation, and a lot of them are my Facebook friends now that I'm no longer in Montana. And that taught me a lot more than just about anything else. You can read about people. Sometimes it's accurate and sometimes it's not. But if you're talking to a friend and that friend happens to be from another ethnic group, then it's easier for you to understand who they are and where they're coming from. By developing relationships with colleagues and mentors who are willing to discuss cultural and racial issues. And this, of course, I have a really good friend who's Dene, Marius Begay, and we have these conversations all the time. Watching films about other races, that's a good way to do it. Participating in cultural activities or visiting other countries. Yeah, I've visited lots of different countries. I've never been to South Asia. This is a Hindu something or other. Yeah, you can see the Hindu. That's something's going on. Culture has a strong influence on the roles that many people see as appropriate. Proper behavior of children toward parents, level of independence and autonomy of children, patterns of communication between parents and children, family boundaries and responsibilities, expression of emotions, and this is one of the things that you have to understand when you first arrive in a place that isn't like what you're used to. Because I've traveled all over the world, I've lived in Germany, I've lived in Japan, I visited Korea, I visited a lot of different places, but I've also lived in a lot of different places. Every place in the United States isn't the same. I used to live in Maryland. I've lived in Nebraska and Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Ohio, Indiana. Of course, I'm from Indiana, California. Where else have I lived? Maryland. I probably mentioned just about Florida. Anyway, people are different wherever you go, and people act differently wherever you go, and they expect you to when in Rome, act like the Romans do. That's what they expect, for you to act like them. Cultural values can influence feelings about work. Cultural values can influence feelings about education, and not everybody has the same feelings about education. It was really important in my family, but I grew up in an area that was a manufacturing area. It was a blue-collar area in Indiana. There were a lot of automotive factories in the area. And because of that, people had different ideas about how much education they needed in order to be successful. Because at that time, this was back in the 50s and 60s, at that time you could graduate from high school, go right into the factory, and make really good money for all of your life. Now, most of those factories are closed now. As a matter of fact, I think all those factories are closed now, and a lot of those individuals that didn't get a very good education because they didn't feel like they needed one, they're struggling a little bit. Cultural values can influence feelings about healthcare, and of course, this is a constant debate on the Navajo Nation as to whether IHS is any good or not. It is on all the Indian reservations. Cultural values can influence feelings about religion, and there are lots of different religions out there. This is kind of conflictual on the Navajo Nation because the Mormon Church is so strong. The Catholic Church is there, and so are other Protestant, or so are Protestant churches. And of course, traditionalism is always there as well. Cultural values can influence feelings about family structure and responsibilities. In many Asian societies, adult children are expected to provide shelter and care for their elderly parents, whereas in a Western culture, a lot of times the elderly parents are sent away. They go to they go to adult living facilities. In some cultures, parents and other older family members expect to be involved in decisions concerning marriage and money spent by adult children. When dealing with newly arrived immigrants, language skills may be sparse and local dialects may not be understood. The children of new immigrants may feel torn between their native culture and the new culture. And of course, this is always a problem. Often, people of different races or cultures have different expectations of the practitioner and the counseling process. Researchers have discovered that Asian clients value insight and personal growth, but they tend to prefer expert guidance, advice, explicit instructions, structured problem focused suggestions. I have a former student that continues to call me because he considers me as still his advisor. He's in his 30s, and this guy still calls me from time to time. But what he wants is expert guidance. He wants me to give him advice, and he follows the advice. That's a bit of a shock. My kids don't follow my advice. And he wants explicit instructions. He wants me to tell him how to live. And now he's down in Valdosta, Georgia. Uh, yeah, it gets interesting. It's hot down there. It's really hot down there. And so we'll see if he survives in the that environment. He has changed jobs every year. Every year he has had to find a new job. Not because he's not any good. That's not the problem. The problem is he always finds something wrong. He was in Duluth, Minnesota. Then he was in Salem, Massachusetts. And last year he was in Indianapolis, Indiana. And now he's in Valdosta, Georgia. And he always finds something wrong. So we'll see how he does in Valdosta. I'm hoping he stays down there. He needs to stay down there because when you look at people's employment records, if they are job hoppers, and that seems to be what he's doing, then people won't hire you because you look like a job hopper, and people want to hire you for an extended length of time, not just for a year. When dealing with American Indians, a counselor has to gauge how traditional the individual is as to determine proper, appropriate, and timing of eye contact, how directly to come to a point in a conversation, personal space, and facial expressions. And not all the different tribes are the same. Um, I can tell you that. I was up on the northern plains, and they certainly don't act the same as people in the Southwest. The dominant culture in the United States, the dominant culture is the white culture. Because of the dominance of the culture, whites tend to be more institutional, to be given more institutional benefits referred to as white privilege. And that's really hard to argue with. I guess Tucker Carlson has argued with it in the past. But the reality is white privilege does exist. Oh, there he is, Tucker. Whites often do not recognize that they are privileged because it is the norm. Just like attractive people don't recognize that they are privileged, tall people don't recognize that they are privileged, athletes don't recognize that they are privileged. Usually privileged people, they think everybody gets the same thing that they do, or they kind of enjoy the fact that they are privileged, but they don't argue with it. They certainly don't argue with it. And of course, attractive, tall, and athletic people do get special privileges. In a lot of high schools, athletes, if you're an athlete, it's a kind of a free ride. And if you're attractive in any class, people will give you or allow you uh, different privileges than if you're not attractive. And of course, as a short, ugly fella, I'm kind of in a world of hurt. Luckily, I was an athlete, but that didn't always give me more privileges than anybody else. I'm a short athlete, and I don't appear to be that athletic, I guess. Women and men are different. They respond differently to the same stimuli, and therefore they must be approached differently in therapy. Research shows that the male and the female brain are different. A male brain is larger than the female brain, even if they had the same size skull. The male brain is still larger. The female brain has a lot more connections in it. The corpus callosum, which is the connection between the two hemispheres, is larger in females than it is in males. So the male brain and the female brain aren't the same. Uh, the male brain, because it's bathed in so much testosterone as it's developing, its structure is different. It's just different. So the male brain and the female brains are very much different. Sex is based on genitals. Men are born with penises, women are born with vaginas. But the difference in brain structure begins after about the sixth week. At that point, the male fetal brain is bathed in testosterone, and like I said, it really changes things. But sex isn't always the final word on gender. Gender is the social assignments of how males and females are supposed to act. Behavior is often based on gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes prescribe how a person should respond to life. Unfortunately, social construction of gender continues throughout our lives, and it changes. It has changed in the short 75 years that I've been alive. Gender bias comes through the use of unexamined stereotypes. The good counselor will ignore stereotypes and allow their client to express feelings freely. And of course, this may be part of their issue, is the fact that they feel one way, but society is forcing them to act another way. Some people do not agree with the sex that they are assigned by genetics. These individuals are referred to as transgender. If they have sex reassignment surgery, they become transsexual. So I can't remember which one is which. I don't know if this is him and he became her, or if it was this is her and she became him. I don't remember. Anyway, you should be able to tell by looking at the chin. I guess that's a male chin, isn't it? So I'm assuming that he's a transgender individual who became female. Transgender and transsexualism has nothing to do with sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is the direction or directions of one's sexual, affectionate, or loving attention. Embedded in sexual orientation are societal beliefs, stereotypes, and views about sexual expression. Coming out for homosexuals is complicated, but has been made easier by the legalization of homosexual unions. Practitioners are not immune to heterosexism. Now, luckily on the Navajo Nation, this is not as pronounced as it is in the general white population. That didn't sound right. This, as the general population in the United States, of course, the dominant white culture is becoming not as dominant as it has been in the past, because the number of white people in the United States is actually declining, and the number of ethnicities and other groups is increasing. So has been a question in the past. Luckily for you, you live on the Navajo Nation, where this is not as much an issue as it is off the reservation. That sounded better. Socioeconomic status refers to standards and measurements of economic wealth and structure. Socioeconomic status is especially efficacious in capitalist economies where wealth dictates your position in society. And this lady's English. You can tell those are pounds. Socioeconomic status is based on several measurements: your income, your occupation, and your education. Socioeconomic status influences many aspects of your life. Quality of health care, obesity is tied to socioeconomic status, educational possibilities, where you get to go to school, neighborhoods that you can afford, and of course, child care. And this is two of the richest men in the world. This is Warren Buffett, and that is Bill Gates. It is important for practitioners to understand that the invisible but powerful impact of socioeconomic status. The higher the socioeconomic status, the more likely a practitioner will assume success for their client. And of course, sometimes those expectations are not real because they have other problems. So they have problems that don't have to do with money. For many clients, spiritual and religious beliefs and training are key to their existence. A wise practitioner will not question a client's spiritual or religious training. Stay away from politics, stay away from religion. Religion involves communal behaviors. Spirituality can be understood as an individual's relationship to God or any ultimate power. And these individuals are Shia Muslims. They worship an individual that was martyred. He was murdered, and on the day of his murder, they beat themselves with sticks and make themselves bleed. And this is the Shia Muslim. The other dominant group in the Muslim religion is the Sunnis. So most Muslims are Sunnis, some are Shia. This became really important in Iraq because Iran is primarily Shia and Iraq was primarily Sunni, and they started militias came together, Shia militias and Sunni militias, and they were fighting each other. And that was one of the reasons why Iraq was such a mess, was because we didn't understand the difference between Sunni and Shia Muslims and the fact that they wanted to blow each other up and shoot each other. So we got caught in the crossfire. Some religions are totalitarian in nature or don't accept any other religious concept as legitimate but their own. Other religions are pluralist in nature and accept many practices as legitimate. And this is people of the Middle East. This is the Orthodox Church, and this is the Jewish faith, and that is the Muslim faith. And they've all come together in Istanbul. This is in Istanbul. And of course, that doesn't include Western religion, which is primarily Roman Catholic and Protestant. And that's not represented in this picture. The Orthodox Church is mostly East. Russia is Russian Orthodox. Eastern Europe, much of it is Orthodox, Greek Orthodox Church. Totally different church. Religions are fascinating. I just find them fascinating. A lot of times they have exactly the same beliefs, but they label themselves differently. It drives you crazy. A practitioner must be aware that their own spirituality or religion might taint their view of a client. In other words, you are seeing them through your own eyes, and your own eyes are tainted by your religion. The practitioner must accept a client within the client's religious context, and that's not always easy, especially if you have a staunch belief. Like the doctor I was just talking about. That doctor was a Baptist, and he felt that Methodists were wrong, and he felt that Mormons were wrong, and Catholics certainly were wrong. So everybody was wrong but him. So he was trying to that's why he was proselytizing. That's why he was preaching to people, trying to tell them how wrong they were. And people don't like to be told how wrong they are. Especially, that's why you don't talk politics or religion. As we age, we change, going from an infant to a toddler, then to a child, then to an adolescent, a young adult, and then declining as an adult until we are no longer functional and we die. And of course, I'm in this last area. I'm not dying, of course, but sometimes. Some days are worse than others, of course. Life stages are influenced by your biological development. Erik Erikson identified 8 life stages that occur in everyone's life, tied to a psychological crisis that must take place for the individual to develop normally psychologically. So as you change, you go through 8 different crises. And the first crisis is at birth. The crisis that must be resolved in the first 2 years is trust versus mistrust. Will the child be taken care of, or will they not be taken care of? And that is the crisis that they're going through. And this stage of life is hope. They're hoping that everything turns out okay. The second life stage, will, begins with potty training somewhere in the second year and runs until the child is completely potty trained. The crisis involved in the second stage is autonomy. Will they become autonomous and be able to deposit their waste where they need to, or will they develop shame and doubt about themselves? The third life stage, purpose, runs until the child starts school at age 5. The crisis that the preschooler goes through is initiative versus guilt. Has the child been allowed to express their desire to discover the world on their own? And in which case they will, this is initiative, or will they feel guilty because they have never been allowed to do that? The fourth life stage, competence, involves going to school and developing a whole new social interaction. The fourth crisis is industry versus inferiority. Will the child strive to compete on an equal level with their peers? And this is when we start competing with other individuals. Where it's not the fact that we are competing, especially, but the fact that we can keep up with them. And that is the industry that we must show, or we feel inferior to everybody else. The fifth life stage, fidelity, encompasses adolescence and all the problems fraught from the transition from being a child into being an adult. The crisis that Erikson identified at this point in life was identity versus role confusion. Who will I be as an adult? How do I act? Do I keep acting like an adolescent, or do I start acting like an adult? And this is the role confusion. And who do I want to be? Do I want to cover myself with tattoos? Do I want to pierce myself all over? What identity am I going to have? And who am I going to be? And will I be accepted by the general population? If you think about it, finding a job, that is something that adults do. And that is the identity that you're looking for. Or will I try to stay an adolescent for the rest of my life? Get drunk on Friday nights and stay drunk until Monday morning. Is that my identity? What is my identity? And what is my how confused am I? And of course, it was different back when I was an adolescent, back in the 60s and 70s. I got married at 19, and I had my first child when I was 20. The sixth life stage, love, occurs as a young adult. The crisis that Erikson identified at this point in life was intimacy versus isolation. Will I pair bond and have children, or will I remain alone? And of course, the more you play on your telephone, the more alone that you probably are, even though you feel like you're connected to people. We'll see how this works out. The seventh life stage, care, involves getting older and runs through the heart of the individual's working years to retirement. The crisis involved is generativity versus stagnation. Stagnation means that you live for yourself. Generativity means that you live for other people. And you try to teach them what you know. The last life stage, wisdom, deals with the individual's declining years and ends with death. The crisis the individual faces at the stage in life involves a life well lived or a life wasted, and the crisis is integrity versus despair. And hopefully, most people die feeling good about themselves. Different rates of physical development and social pressures influence life stage decisions. Some people may go through the life stages quickly because they are forced to support their family at an early age. Others may delay getting into adulthood because life situations have not forced them through identity versus identity confusion. And a lot of this, you see this in movies. Vietnam War was one of those situations where people were drafted right out of high school and were forced to go to war. And of course, carrying a gun and shooting at people and being shot at is very traumatic. This happened to my brother. I had a brother that had a draft number of 1, and he graduated from high school in June, and by July he was in the military, and then by October he was in Vietnam. And he had just turned 18 in July. As soon as he turned 18, he was drafted. Actually, he joined the military because he knew he was going to be drafted, and he wanted a job that he wanted to get into something, to have a job in the military that he wanted. So he actually enlisted. As soon as he turned 18, he enlisted, and by October he was in Vietnam. And there you go. He was there for a year. He was there for 13 months. Most of the characters in Seth Rogen movies are individuals who are in identity confusion, uh, or most of the old movies that Seth Rogen used to make. Now he's not. He doesn't seem to be making movies as much anymore. He's lost a lot of weight, stopped smoking pot, so maybe he's grown up. Oddly, during adolescence, everyone wants to fit in, but adulthood means establishing your own identity. So while you're in high school, everybody tries to act the same. But as soon as you graduate from high school, you have to establish your own identity. The people that struggle are the people that try to stay the people they were in high school. But this can be extended. It's the same thing happens in college. People are party people in college. They want to continue to be those party people that they were in college. And of course, that is not an adult identity. Practitioners help clients deal with challenges of life stages. Not everyone passes through or is allowed to pass through the life stages at the same rate. Some people are assisted through the life stages, and these are the individuals that have money, they have parents that want to keep them young for as long as they possibly can. Family influences our worldview. What we are told as children will temper the way that we deal with people outside the family all of our lives. Even the concept of family may be skewed by those that we grow up with. Understanding how we have been affected by our own family helps us recognize these experiences personal and not assume that the same meanings and experiences are true for others. And this is really kind of tough because just because you grew up that way doesn't mean everybody else grew up that way. One person may have no support from their parents, another individual might recognize cousins or anyone similar as brothers and sisters. And I don't even recognize my cousins as relatives. But then again, that is the environment that I grew up in. My family, my extended family is fairly questionable, and because of that, my mother and father didn't really want to identify with their extended family. So we kind of identify just with ourselves, and because of that, I don't really recognize my cousins as close relatives, whereas you guys, as Dene people, you recognize your cousins as your cousin brothers and uh, cousin sisters, sister cousins. Wow, I haven't been on the Navajo Nation for a long time, not since COVID anyway. There we go. There are a number of groups of people who are referred to as family amongst the traditional Dene. Clans dictate family and extended relationships, whereas other people don't have, or especially the dominant white culture doesn't have this whole concept of clan. Developmental stages for families are influenced by culture, religious, and spiritual beliefs, socioeconomic status, etc. As families develop in time, changes in any of these statuses can cause changes in the family dynamic. Family has changed in recent decades. Divorce was once a social stigma, but now many people have multiple marriages and thus multiple families. Blended families have become the norm. I've been married 3 times, and I've been divorced obviously twice. Well, I guess it doesn't have to be obvious. Somebody could have died, but nobody did. And I was lucky enough to keep my children from my 2 marriages. Disabilities are a fact of life. With every ability we tout, there are those, including us, who may lack the ability. I can remember lots of things, but I have a hard time remembering the lyrics to songs. Now, this isn't really a disability. It is just a problem that I have. I can't remember lyrics to songs, and my wife makes fun of me all the time. My daughter can hear a song one time and she remembers all the lyrics, but I can't. I just cannot remember lyrics. I don't know why. Disabilities come in all shapes and sizes. Some make life a struggle, while others, like my lyrics phobia, have very little impact at all. It is estimated that 20% of the people in the United States will experience a serious disability in their lifetime. That's 1 out of every 5 people. Developmental disabilities are severe and chronic. They are due to a mental or physical impairment. They manifest themselves before the age of 22. They're likely to continue indefinitely. They result in substantial functional limitations. They represent services and support for survival. In the past, many people with disabilities were isolated from the mainstream community. However, through legislation, people with disabilities are now afforded the opportunity to live lives as close to that of a non-disabled person as possible. There are legal protections for those with disabilities: Americans with Disabilities Act, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, the Rehabilitation Act, Affordable Health Choices Act. Language is important when dealing with people with a disability. Words used in the past may have taken on the stronger and stronger stigmas. Therefore, being politically correct when dealing with disabilities makes the stigma less intrusive. So we don't talk about mailmen anymore. We talk about mail carriers. We don't refer to people as midgets or dwarves. We refer to them as horizontally challenged. We don't say somebody is blind. We say they're visually challenged. We don't talk about people being fat. We talk about them being stout or overweight. We don't talk about people being crippled. We talk about people who are disabled or physically challenged. It is important for practitioners to take care of themselves. They must be aware of possible stressors in their private life that can impact their lives. They must maintain a sense of perspective. Are they living vicariously through their clients? And this is a problem that a lot of people have. They've got a client with a select problem, and they start identifying with that client, and all of a sudden they feel the stress of the client's problem. The practitioner is the instrument of therapy, and unless they are cared for and in tune, they will not be able to do their job. Focusing on others and ignoring your own needs can lead to burnout. And of course, this is a real serious problem with psychologists, with social workers, is the fact that burnout is very common. And if you are one of those touchy-feely people, um, who starts crying when other people cry, then probably this isn't the job for you, because you need to be the strong person. This person is showing a deficit that they need to take care of. Your job is to take care of that deficit, not to feel the same thing that they feel. Burnout is increasing discouragement and emotional and physical exhaustion. Burnout is not uncommon among practitioners. Building a healthy lifestyle is important and must be started immediately. I'm sorry. Don't wait until you graduate to get into the groove of a healthy lifestyle. The sooner you start, the more routine it will become. When a practitioner is working with a client, they will sometimes begin experiencing the emotional and physical pain of their clients, and this is known as secondary traumatic stress. Be careful. Don't identify with your clients. Know who you are. It is important to work on developing character strengths such as creativity, love of learning, humility, and other qualities. And I think that is it. Yes, it is. And that's why I have the picture on the front. The man creating himself. That's the way to do it. Make yourself as strong as you possibly can. Okay, well, I'll talk to you again next week.